welcome to the deep dive. The financial world, especially for regional banks, is really at a fascinating crossroads. It's being driven by something pretty transformative, generative AI. We're going to take a deep dive into your sources today to understand what this seismic shift really means.
It is fascinating. And what's key here is that we're looking at more than just another tech trend. This feels like a fundamental shift. It's really poised to redefine competition, value, everything across financial services. Our mission today is to pull out the most important insights from all this material, maybe highlight some surprising facts, and really help you cut through the noise on this critical topic for regional banks.
Exactly. And we've got some really compelling stuff here that paints a clear picture, both the massive opportunities and, let's be honest, the significant hurdles too. So let's get started. Okay, let's unpack this. When we look at the financial landscape, particularly for regional banks, why is GenAI such an absolute game changer right now? I mean, is this something they can afford to just watch from the sidelines?
Oh, definitely not. They really can't sit this one out. And it's not just hype. The economic potential is, well, it's staggering. Industry analysis is projecting GenAI could add somewhere between $200 billion and $340 billion annually to the global banking industry.
Wow.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, that's like 9%, 15% of the sector's operating profits. And the reason is it could impact up to maybe 90% of all working hours in banking. It could boost employee productivity by, say, 20% to 30%.
Yeah, the massive slice of the pie.
Right.
And those projections are clearly translating into serious investment, right? We're talking about total spend by banks on GenAI going from, what, $5.6 billion this year to an estimated $85.7 billion by 2030.
It's an astonishing leap. It's huge growth in only a few years. And it really points to a race to deploy this stuff, which raises the question, right, who's investing most heavily? And it's largely the big guys. The money center institutions are leveraging their vast resources. Think about JP Morgan Chase advertising for over 3,600 AI-related positions in just 1 year. Or Bank of America investing $4 billion in new tech, including AI. They're already deploying or, in the process of deploying GenAI at a much higher rate. Something like 79% of banks, over $250 billion in assets. Compare that to only about 40% of banks under $10 billion. Big difference.
So the bigger players are definitely moving incredibly fast.
Okay.
But what about the other side of that competitive squeeze? You mentioned the smaller, more agile players.
Yeah, on the other side, you've got these agile fintech rivals. They're innovating rapidly, and crucially, they're not burdened by the legacy systems that, well, plague a lot of traditional banks. They're threatened to capture market share with, frankly, superior digital experiences, offering things traditional banks often struggle to match quickly.
And for regional banks,
Uh-huh.
the ones that have always relied on their strong local presence, those personal relationships.
Yeah.
What does this sort of pincer movement mean for those core advantages?
That's the critical point. Those traditional advantages are rapidly eroding as customer behavior, both consumer and commercial, shifts decisively toward digital-first interactions. That geographic moat, relying on the branch down the street, it's evaporating. For regional banks, getting up to speed technologically isn't a luxury anymore. It's a basic requirement for survival.
So it sounds like regional banks absolutely have to get on board, no question.
Mm-hmm.
But is it just about keeping pace, playing defense, or is there a bigger, maybe even a more surprising opportunity for them here?
I think there is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the real, maybe counterintuitive value of GenAI for regional banks isn't trying to replicate the mass market scale of the giants. It's actually about profoundly amplifying their core historical strength, those personal relationships. It's about delivering something we've started calling humanity at scale.
Humanity at scale. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
It's really striking. But practically speaking, how does GenAI help a regional bank achieve that and not just automate the human touch away?
Well, GenAI excels at things like natural language understanding, summarization, content generation, skills that align perfectly with that high-touch relationship model. So instead of replacing human interaction, it can empower the relationship managers, the loan officers, the customer service staff, help them provide more personalized, more context-aware, maybe even more empathetic service by freeing them up from the mundane tasks.
So it's less about automating jobs away and more about freeing up employees to do what only humans can do best, focusing on judgment, empathy, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It frees up valuable employee time from those repetitive, data-heavy tasks so they can focus on building deeper relationships, really understanding unique client needs, providing that nuanced, high-value financial guidance. This reframes just AI. It's not just defense trying to keep up. It becomes an offensive strategy, a way to reinforce what makes a regional bank unique. The fundamental choice for them is, do they want to become a sort of less efficient version of a big impersonal bank, or use GenAI to supercharge their greatest strength?
All right, let's unpack that further then. Given that unique opportunity, where specifically can regional banks use GenAI right now to make a tangible, real-world difference?
Okay, well, we can start with the customer experience. Right there in the front office, GenAI can analyze huge amounts of customer data, transaction histories, spending patterns, stated financial goals to build really comprehensive dynamic client profiles. This lets banks generate hyper-tailored messages, proactive offers. For instance, the system could spot a commercial client who might need a new line of credit or a retail customer who's now eligible for mortgage refinancing, and then automate that very specific outreach.
So fewer generic marketing blasts and much more like, hey, this looks like exactly what you need right now kind of advice. That sounds powerful. What about customer service itself?
Yeah, moving way beyond those clunky old chatbots people hate. GenAI powers really sophisticated 247 virtual assistants. They understand context, handle complex interactions using natural language. You see examples from the big players like Wells Fargo's Fargo or Bunk's Fin, but it's definitely not just for the giants.
Right. And we actually have a great example here for smaller institutions. Great Lakes Credit Union. Tell us about the impact they saw with their GenAI voice assistant.
Great Lakes Credit Union, yeah, they implemented one.
Yeah.
And they saw their call containment rate. You know, how many calls the automated system handles without needing a human at sword. Went from about 25% with their old system to an average of 75% after hours. That's a huge impact on efficiency and probably customer satisfaction, too.
75%. That's a massive leap.
Yeah.
Okay, what about that often painful process of actually bringing a new client on board?
Client onboarding, especially the Know Your Customer, KYC, and anti-money laundering AML checks. That's traditionally a major bottleneck, right? GenAI can automate and speed this up significantly. By extracting and verifying information from different documents, it cuts down on manual data entry, reduces errors.
And what's the tangible impact there? Is there a good example?
Well, consider the fintech firm Airwallex. They deployed a GenAI copilot for their compliance team. It reduced their false positive alerts by 50%. 50%. And it accelerated their KYC onboarding by 20%. So that's a clear win-win, efficiency and accuracy. Now, if we move to the back office, fortifying core operations. Think about commercial lending. It's incredibly document intensive. GenAI can process unstructured data from loan apps, financial statements, contracts. It can automatically summarize key info, even draft initial credit memos, manage the whole document lifecycle.
Wow, that sounds like it could take a huge load off. Is there a regional bank example of this in action?
Absolutely. Take Bankwell Bank in Connecticut. They have a GenAI virtual lending assistant they call Sarah. Apparently, Sarah automated about 90% of their small business loan application process. 90%. It turned what used to take weeks into basically a real-time interaction for the human officers, letting them focus just on that final critical review. Then there's regulatory reporting, another huge burden, especially for smaller banks. GenAI can continuously monitor regulatory changes, interpret what they mean for the bank, and automate generating the reports. Citigroup, a huge bank, obviously, but they use GenAI to summarize nearly 1,100 pages of new U.S. capital rules in just a fraction of the time it would normally take humans.
So this isn't just about cutting costs. It's actually helping regional banks keep up with complex regulations that used to really favor the giants with massive compliance teams. That does feel like it levels the playing field somewhat.
It absolutely does. And maybe one of the most pragmatic, highest ROI entry points for GenAI, and importantly, with the least initial risk, is building internal employee copilots. These are secure, private chatbots, trained only on the bank's own internal stuff, policies, procedures, product manuals.
Like an always-on expert for your team. So if a new teller needs to know the exact process for reissuing an ATM card, bam, they get an immediate, accurate answer without tying up a manager. What kind of return on investment are banks actually seeing with these?
The ROI is pretty compelling. South State Bank, they're a regional lender, about $45 billion in assets they developed their own, called Tate. They built it for around $25,000, and it showed an 11.6x ROI in its first year, saved an estimated 5,200 staff hours. And we also see smaller banks like MRV banks in Missouri building their own internal AI resource just for instant bank-specific answers. These tools can pay for themselves really fast. And finally, in this area, GenAI offers powerful new tools for advanced risk management and financial crime prevention. Take fraud detection. GenAI can analyze millions of transaction patterns in real time. It spots subtle anomalies, completely new fraud schemes, often with greater accuracy and speed than the older systems.
So it's not just flagging the obvious stuff, but spotting brand new patterns that criminals might be trying out. What kind of improvements are we seeing there in practice?
We're seeing significant gains. MasterCard, for example, is aiming for a 20% improvement in its fraud detection using AI. Valley Bank successfully reduced their anti-money laundering false positives by 22%. So real, measurable results. What's fascinating here, though, and really important for strategy, is that while those customer-facing applications, like helping with credit decisions, offer potentially huge value, they also carry the highest levels of regulatory risk and reputational risk. An error in a loan decision, that could be absolutely catastrophic for a bank's reputation, let alone the compliance side.
That makes perfect sense. So given that higher risk with customer-facing stuff, where does a regional bank realistically start? How do they begin to tackle this massive undertaking without betting the farm?
Right. Those internal-facing applications, especially the employee copilot we just talked about, they exist in a much more controlled environment. The human employee acts as that final filter, right? Which dramatically reduces the blast radius if the AI makes a mistake or gives a weird answer. And the compelling ROI we saw from South State and others proves these internal tools deliver rapid, measurable value with much lower initial risk.
Okay. So what does this all mean then for a logical roadmap? How should a regional bank think about sequencing this?
Well, the most logical strategic sequence, especially for a resource-constrained regional bank, really seems to be that crawl, walk, run approach we mentioned. You crawl first with those internal efficiency gains, low risk, high ROI. Then you walk by carefully expanding into more controlled back-office automation, building on what you've learned. And only then do you run towards that full-scale, potentially higher risk, but also high-reward customer-facing transformation.
It sounds amazing. The potential is clearly huge. But gosh, nothing this transformative comes without its challenges. It's almost enough to make you want to stick with pen and paper, isn't it?
Cool.
What are the really big hurdles for regional banks trying to get into GenAI?
Oh, absolutely. The hurdles are significant. The first major one is what you could call the foundational triad: data, technology, and talent. Many regional banks, let's face it, are still operating on core banking systems that are decades old. These legacy systems, often with data stuck in silos using outdated protocols, they're fundamentally incompatible with modern AI. Just integrating GenAI can be a monumental technical and financial challenge. Right. So if your underlying data isn't clean, accessible, unified, the AI simply can't do its job properly. It's garbage in, garbage out.
That's exactly it. It's a critical point. GenAI models are a direct reflection of the data they learn from. That garbage in, garbage out principle applies with, well, uncompromising force here. If your data is fragmented across systems, incomplete, maybe reflects historical biases, the AI's outputs will be unreliable, inaccurate, and could even lead to discriminatory or non-compliant outcomes. So establishing robust data governance, cleansing that data, standardizing it, it's costly, yes, but it's absolutely non-negotiable. It's table stakes.
And there's the people side. We know AI talent is notoriously expensive, hard to find, hard to keep.
Absolutely. The demand for AI expertise just vastly outstrips the supply right now. That creates fierce competition. Regional banks often just can't match the salaries offered by big tech firms or the giant money center banks. So a heavy emphasis must be placed on upskilling and reskilling the existing workforce, investing in your current people.
And that brings us to the elephant in the room with AI job displacement. How are regional banks supposed to navigate that conversation, both internally and externally?
It's a tough one. Some projections suggest AI could automate tasks affecting up to 75% of banking jobs and potentially displace maybe as many as 54% of roles over time. This demands a really proactive change management strategy. It has to focus on retraining employees for new, arguably higher value roles that emphasize those uniquely human skills: critical judgment, creativity, empathetic relationship building. It needs transparency. Okay, then there's the AI black box itself. This leads to significant model risks, ethical risks. Bias is a huge one. If a model is trained on historical lending data that maybe unintentionally reflects past societal biases, well, the AI will learn and likely amplify those biases. That could lead to discriminatory outcomes in credit decisions, product recommendations. It's a massive compliance risk, especially under fair lending laws.
And I've heard the term AI hallucinations. That sounds worrying. What exactly does that mean in a banking context?
Yeah, it's a real issue. Many advanced GenAI models operate as black boxes. It's often incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible, to fully trace back how a specific input led to a particular output. This lack of explainability clashes directly with regulations like the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which requires lenders to give specific reasons if they deny credit. And hallucinations, that's when the AI generates information that sounds plausible, maybe even confident, but is entirely false, made up. In banking, where decisions involve financial advice, creditworthiness, an AI hallucination could be, well, catastrophic. And of course, woven through all of this is ensuring data privacy and security. It's paramount. GenAI models need vast data sets, often including sensitive, personally identifiable information, PII, confidential financial details. Just using public, third-party large language models, those underlying AI engines can introduce significant risks. Proprietary bank data could inadvertently leak or even be used to train these public models. Huge risk.
And this is an industry that's already heavily regulated, maybe one of the most regulated. How does AI fit into that existing framework, and how does the evolving regulatory landscape complicate things further?
That's the central tension right now. The specific regulatory framework for AI is still nascent, it's rapidly changing across the globe, so banks have to innovate within this uncertainty while also making absolutely sure they comply with all the existing financial regulations, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, Bank Secrecy Act, you name it. It's walking a tightrope. And another layer. While AI is a powerful defensive tool against threats, it also equips the bad actors with new weapons. GenAI lowers the barrier for cybercriminals. It enables them to create highly sophisticated phishing emails, realistic deepfake audio or video to impersonate executives, even novel types of malware. This seriously escalates the cybersecurity threat landscape. It forces banks to invest in even more advanced, probably AI-powered defenses just to keep up.
Which then raises a really fundamental question. If an AI system provides flawed financial advice or makes a bad automated decision, who is ultimately liable?
That's a critical and largely unresolved legal question right now. Is it the bank? Is it the software vendor who supplied the AI tool? The developer of the underlying model? The term AI agent even implies some kind of fiduciary duty, but that relationship isn't legally defined yet. It creates a significant liability vacuum for banks deploying these technologies.
So it really sounds like these risks aren't separate issues. They're deeply interconnected, almost like links in a chain of potential failure that could ripple right through the organization if not managed carefully. Okay, so with all these massive opportunities on one side and these really significant challenges on the other, what's the actual playbook look like for a typical regional bank? It clearly can't be a simple copy-paste from what the giant banks with their multi-billion-dollar budgets are doing, right?
You're absolutely right, it can't be. And the evidence strongly suggests, especially in the early stages, that a centralized or at least centrally led approach works best for regional banks. McKinsey analysis found something like 70% of financial institutions that had centralized their GenAI models successfully moved use cases into production. That compares to only about 30% for those with a more decentralized, fragmented approach.
And why is that centralization even more crucial for regional banks, given, as you said, they're often constrained resources?
Because with limited resources, fragmentation is deadly. Having different departments making redundant efforts, maybe choosing different cloud providers, different LLM vendors, setting up conflicting risk frameworks, it can waste precious time and money. A central team, or at least a strong central coordinating function, ensures consistent decisions, allows for sharing best practices, and keeps everything aligned with the bank's main strategic objectives.
Right.
It avoids costly missteps. And we touched on this sequence earlier, but it really is foundational. A big bang approach, trying to do everything at once, is just ill-advised. The journey has to be phased. So, phase one, the crawl phase. Leadership needs to first identify specific business problems or pain points where GenAI can deliver clear, measurable value, but with a manageable level of risk. That internal employee co-pilot we keep coming back to, it's often the ideal starting point. High ROI, low external risk profile. Perfect for building internal capability and confidence.
Okay, so that's where you build some initial muscle, prove the concept internally. What comes next in this phased approach? And how do you make sure you're not getting ahead of yourself on the risk side?
Right. So phase two, the walk phase. This needs to happen almost concurrently with those first pilots. The bank must establish the core governance structure. This usually looks like a GenAI Center of Excellence, COE, or maybe a central control tower. This centralized function is responsible for developing all those critical frameworks, risk management protocols, ethical guidelines, data privacy controls, regulatory compliance checks, model validation procedures. And it is absolutely imperative that this governance foundation is built before you try to scale solutions widely, or especially before moving into those higher risk customer-facing applications. Get the guardrails up first.
And then once that foundation is solid, that governance is in place, then you can really start to run.
Exactly. Phase 3 is the run phase. Once those initial pilots have proven successful and that governance framework is firmly established and working, then the bank can begin to strategically scale the solutions that make sense. But this phase is as much about people and process as it is about the technology itself. It requires a concerted change management effort preparing the workforce for new ways of working. It needs comprehensive training, transparent communication from leadership about why this is happening and how it helps. And leadership needs to actively foster a culture that's data-driven, embraces learning, and isn't afraid to adapt.
Now, you mentioned resources. Regional banks obviously can't match the multi-billion-dollar R&D budgets of the biggest players. So how do they actually get access to this cutting-edge technology without, breaking the bank themselves?
This is where the ecosystem becomes the great equalizer. Success really hinges on strategically leveraging external partners. Think about the major cloud providers: Microsoft Azure OpenAI, Google Cloud AI, Amazon Web Services. They offer enterprise-grade, pre-trained foundation models and the necessary infrastructure, often on a usage-based pricing model. South State Bank, using Azure for Tate, is a prime example. Then there's collaborating with specialized AI fintechs. They often provide targeted, almost turnkey solutions for specific banking problems, like Bankwell Bank working with cascading AI for their lending assistant. And for banks that do have some in-house tech talent, fine-tuning powerful open-source LLMs models like Llama or Mistral on their own proprietary data can be a very cost-effective option. It offers more customization and control if you have the capability. And when thinking about the economics, yes, direct cost savings from automation are real and important, but maybe the most significant long-term value comes from revenue generation and strategic growth. Things like increased revenue because your cross-selling is more effective now. Higher customer retention because personalization is so much better. Expanded loan capacity because your officers are more productive. That's where the big strategic wins might be.
So it's not just about trimming costs, but fundamentally about growing the business, deepening those relationships we talked about earlier. Given all these options, cloud, fintechs, open source, what does this mean for that core strategic decision-making process for regional banks? Is it still build versus buy?
That traditional build versus buy framework feels insufficient here. It's almost obsolete for GenAI in this context. Regional banks simply cannot build this foundational AI technology at the scale and speed needed to compete with the giants. It's just not feasible. So the new strategic paradigm really has to be integrate and govern. Success depends less on massive internal AI development teams and much more on the bank's institutional capacity to wisely select, securely integrate, and rigorously govern these powerful third-party AI solutions, which means focusing your scarce talent development maybe more on AI risk managers, vendor management specialists, integration architects, rather than trying to build your own large language models from scratch.
Okay, so we've unpacked the imperative, why they have to do this. We've looked at the use cases, what they can do, the challenges, the hurdles they face, and the playbook, how they might approach it strategically.
Yeah.
What's next? What's on the horizon for GenAI in banking? What should we be watching for?
Well, one major trend we're starting to see emerge is the shift beyond AI that just assists humans by generating content, moving into what's being called agentic AI. These are AI systems that are capable of reasoning, planning, actually taking actions, and executing complex, multi-step tasks autonomously on behalf of the bank or its customers.
Autonomous actions. Wow. Okay, that sounds both incredibly efficient and, a little scary. How is that really different from the co-pilots and assistants we've discussed? And what would that even look like in practice for a bank?
It's a significant leap in capability and autonomy. So an AI agent, for example, might be tasked with a goal like optimize this small business client's cash flow. It might then autonomously analyze their accounts, identify a potential payroll shortfall coming up, proactively suggest a suitable short-term credit line, maybe even generate the application documents, and then route the whole package for a final human review and approval. The key difference is the AI initiating and executing a complex, multi-step process towards a goal, not just responding to a prompt.
Okay, I see the difference. And what does that evolution mean for all those risks we discussed earlier? Bias, hallucination, security, liability. Do they just get amplified exponentially?
Well, while the potential for efficiency gains is immense with agentic AI, yes, it will almost certainly dramatically amplify all those risks. Issues around accountability, security breaches, that unresolved fiduciary responsibility question, ensuring adequate control, they all become even more acute, even more critical. And that's why those robust governance frameworks, the human-in-the-loop oversight models that banks need to build today for GenAI, they're not just best practices for the present. They are absolutely critical foundational investments for future readiness. They're what will prepare banks to navigate this next wave of more autonomous AI safely and responsibly. So if we boil it all down for regional bank leadership, it really seems to distill into maybe 5 core recommendations. 1. Embrace GenAI as a core strategic imperative, not just another tech project. It needs to be fundamental to the bank's long-term strategy, tied directly to reinforcing your unique value proposition. 2. Prioritize governance above all else. Establish that centralized center of excellence, build a comprehensive enterprise-wide risk management framework early. Because remember, you can outsource the technology, but you cannot outsource the risk. The bank remains fully accountable for what the AI does. 3. Start internally using that crawl, walk, run approach. Begin with those lower risk, high ROI internal use cases, like the employee copilot. Build capability, prove the value, learn lessons in a controlled environment first. 4. Leverage the ecosystem via an integrate and govern model, except that you can't match the R&D budgets of the giants. Instead, focus your energy on becoming really good at strategically selecting, securely integrating, and rigorously governing best-in-class solutions from trusted partners. And 5, invest proactively in your people. This is crucial. Commit to transparent communication, provide comprehensive reskilling and upskilling programs, and paint a clear vision for how AI will augment human roles, freeing employees to focus on those uniquely human skills, judgment, creativity, empathy that build lasting relationships.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what really stands out to you? It's just so clear that generative AI isn't just some passing buzzword for regional banking. It feels like a truly profound shift. And maybe surprisingly, it offers a real chance for them to redefine what personal service actually means in this digital age.
I agree. If we connect it back to that bigger picture, the fundamental choice for regional banks isn't whether they adopt AI, it's how they choose to wield it. The path forward requires real discipline, it requires smart strategic partnerships, and maybe most importantly, a deep commitment to adapting, especially when it comes to safeguarding that precious customer trust and truly fostering the human talent within their own organizations.
And that really is something to think about, isn't it? As AI continues its relentless evolution, moving from just assisting humans towards these increasingly autonomous agentic AI systems, will regional banks truly be able to achieve that humanity at scale? Can they become that ultimate blend of high-tech efficiency and irreplaceable high-touch service? And how will this ongoing shift further challenge our fundamental understanding of trust, of accountability in the entire financial world? Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.